They tried to erase her, the WNBA's brightest star, the rookie who packed arenas, shattered ratings, and brought a new generation of fans into the game, vanishing from the lineup without explanation. No press release, no injury report, just silence. But two players refused to stay quiet. Sophie Cunningham warned, "You don't sideline your biggest star unless you're scared of her power." And Lexi Hull followed with, "If this can happen to Caitlin Clark, what will they do to the rest of us?"
This is where it's hard to relay when there's so much because we don't get the mic.
In hours, the clips went viral. In days, the league's secrets were exposed. And in weeks, the WNBA faced a rebellion it never saw coming. What happens when institutions fear influence they cannot control, and the athletes refuse to be erased? The disappearance. It started with whispers that something was not right. Reporters at practice noticed Caitlin Clark was not warming up with the starters. Her name was missing from the rotation board. Coaches deflected questions with vague non-answers that only amplified suspicion. Within hours, speculation erupted across social media. Load management, some insiders claimed. Disciplinary issues, others hinted. But every explanation fell apart under basic scrutiny. Clark had not broken any rules. She had not missed practice or violated team policies. Her performance metrics were stellar.
This season, and having an excellent passing season as well. Her assist numbers.
She was leading her team in every meaningful category while generating more media attention than the rest of the league combined. So why would any organization remove the single player responsible for driving unprecedented growth? Then the leaks began. So sources close to the league started whispering about unspoken conflicts between Clark and high-ranking officials. Her outspoken attitude during post-game interviews apparently bothered people in power. Her growing social media influence represented something executives could not control. She was no longer just a player following instructions. She had become a phenomenon with her own voice and her own platform and her own ideas about how women's basketball should present itself to the world.
Woman who has captivated the entire globe. Sells out arenas everywhere she goes.
According to one particularly damning rumor, Clark pushed back during a closed-door meeting against league marketing decisions. She called them tone-deaf and out of touch with real fans. Within 48 hours, her minutes started dropping. Within 72 hours, she was benched entirely.
Given so much to this program, and they have to sit the rest of finish their career on the bench.
And then she was gone. No press conference, no media access, and no statement from her team. Just cold, quiet erasure, like they were trying to suffocate her momentum before it became something they could never contain. The WNBA apparently believed this could happen without consequence. They were catastrophically wrong. Fans did not just notice the disappearance. They mobilized. Social media erupted with the hashtag #WhereIsCaitlin. Thousands demanded answers. Comment sections flooded with angry messages, questioning every decision the league had made. Even NBA stars began chiming in, calling the situation shady and disrespectful to the game itself. The silence from league officials only made suspicion worse. Every hour without explanation felt like confirmation that something corrupt was happening behind closed doors. But this was no longer just about silence. It was about silencing. And that distinction is what pushed Sophie Cunningham past the point of staying quiet. Silenced no more. Sophie Cunningham did not wait for permission. While reporters scrambled for information and fans flooded league inboxes with outrage, she walked to a post-game microphone and bypassed every unwritten rule about what players are supposed to say. She skipped the cliches. She ignored the careful corporate language athletes are trained to use. And she dropped a sentence that traveled faster than anything the WNBA's public relations team could control. You do not sideline your biggest star unless you are scared of her power.
Clark going toe-to-toe with the biggest women's basketball stars on the biggest stage.
That single line exploded across every platform within minutes. Clips spread like wildfire through sports media. So commentators who had been tiptoeing around the controversy suddenly had permission to ask the questions everyone was thinking. Sophie did not stop with one interview. On her podcast, she expanded on exactly what she believed was happening. In team meetings, she reportedly challenged leadership directly. On live broadcasts, she continued saying what most athletes were too afraid to admit publicly.
because I think we are exhausted. You know, when it's blow after blow, a whole bunch of other things going on.
Clark was not benched for basketball reasons. She was benched because her influence threatened people who preferred controllable stars over authentic voices. Sophie accused the league of playing political games with player careers. She slammed executives for prioritizing control over progress. She called out a culture that punishes excellence when that excellence comes with opinions the front office does not like. The backlash she risked was enormous. Speaking this directly against league interests could have destroyed her career. Endorsement deals could vanish. Playing time could evaporate. The whisper networks that determine who gets opportunities and who gets frozen out could turn against her permanently. Sophie apparently decided the truth mattered more than her own safety. Fans rallied behind her instantly. Hashtags multiplied into movements. Stand with Sophie and Free Clark began trending side by side. Her courage lit a match the league never expected, and the flames were spreading in directions nobody could predict. But Sophie was not standing alone for long, because the very next day another player decided she was ready to fight alongside her. And what Lexi Hull said next cracked the foundation of WNBA credibility in ways that may never fully heal. The Players' Rebellion. Lexi Hull did not issue a carefully worded statement. She did not sit for a scheduled interview with approved talking points. She walked into the press room after practice, positioned herself in front of the cameras.
We obviously are playing with nothing to lose. We're playing with a lot of joy, a lot of love for each other, and I think
If Caitlin Clark can be treated like this, what do you think they will do to the rest of us? No corporate phrasing, no diplomatic hedging, just raw, unfiltered truth aimed directly at the heart of what every player in the league was privately thinking. That one sentence turned into an earthquake. The clip went viral instantly, spreading beyond WNBA audiences into mainstream sports coverage. Commentators from ESPN to independent YouTube channels were suddenly asking the same question.
I would have said something to her. I would have clapped back at her. That's who I am.
What exactly is happening behind closed doors at the WNBA? Lexi followed her press room statement with a social media post that triggered a storm of interpretation. A black and white photograph of herself and Caitlin with a single word in the caption. Loyalty. Was she exposing betrayal inside the locker room? Was the message aimed at management? At teammates who stayed silent? At the entire culture of fear that keeps players from speaking honestly? No one could say for certain, but the timing made the implications impossible to ignore. Sources reported that Lexi had become one of the most vocal figures in team meetings since the controversy erupted. One leaked account claimed she challenged the coaching staff directly, asking why the only player drawing sellout crowds was suddenly riding the bench while the team pretended nothing unusual was happening. Then came the cryptic tweets. Lexi posted and quickly deleted a message that read, "If you want to build a legacy, stop silencing the ones who create it."
We have the star power, we have the elite play on the floor, but it's been a bit of a hidden gem.
Fans screenshotted the post before it disappeared. The image spread across Reddit and TikTok and fan pages within hours. Some believed it was aimed directly at WNBA executives. Others interpreted it as criticism of media figures downplaying the controversy. Everyone agreed on one point. Lexi was not simply reacting to events. She was taking a deliberate stand. Reports emerged that she was helping organize conversations among younger players across multiple teams. Athletes who felt the league was trapped in old politics. Who feared losing everything if they spoke honestly about what they witnessed. Who wanted change but needed someone willing to go first. Sophie and Lexi had become that someone. Together they formed a front line, and the league was now facing something it never anticipated. A rebellion led by its own players. The fan uprising. The moment Sophie and Lexi spoke out, fans transformed from spectators into activists. Social media did not just react. It erupted with coordinated fury that overwhelmed every platform simultaneously. Twitter threads compiled evidence of suspicious treatment. Instagram comments flooded official WNBA posts with demands for accountability. Reddit forums organized research efforts tracking inconsistencies in league explanations. TikTok creators produced viral breakdowns dissecting every detail of the controversy, with hashtags multiplied by the hour. Justice for Clark, Free Caitlin, Stop Silencing Stars. each one trending higher as more users joined the cause. Fans began compiling documentation that painted a damning picture. Timestamps showing when Clark's minutes started dropping.
Caitlin Clark, this is the change of speed I'm talking about. She's still surveying between the legs.
Clips of physical play against her that referees ignored. Side-by-side comparisons of how different players received different treatment for identical situations. Freeze frames capturing obvious fouls that went uncalled. Statistical analyses proving her performance justified more playing time, not less. Some investigators even tracked WNBA social media channels and documented a measurable reduction in Clark-related content during the days surrounding her benching. The evidence suggested coordination, planning, an organized effort to diminish her visibility before anyone noticed what was happening. The pressure on sponsors became impossible to ignore. Leaked reports indicated that at least 2 brand partners reached out privately demanding clarification before continuing promotional relationships. That language translates simply, fix this mess before we pull our money. Merchandise sales for Clark jerseys reportedly collapsed overnight. Ticket returns surged for games she was not expected to play. Arenas that had been selling out for the first time in years.
Appearance by Caitlin Clark out here. There were thousands of people who came from all over.
Suddenly faced empty sections. The financial consequences of alienating fans materialized faster than anyone in the front office anticipated. Cities that had finally tasted what mainstream attention felt like watched that attention evaporate in real time. The fan uprising accomplished something critics alone could never achieve. It made the controversy impossible to contain within sports media. Mainstream outlets started covering the story. Cultural commentators weighed in on what it meant for women's athletics. The conversation expanded beyond basketball into broader questions about how institutions treat the individuals who generate their success.
This comes after Clark's record-setting feats in college at Iowa.
And through it all, the league maintained its silence, apparently hoping the storm would pass if they simply waited long enough. They could not have been more wrong. The statement that backfired after nearly 2 days of mounting pressure, the WNBA finally issued an official response. It was worse than saying nothing. A carefully worded corporate statement appeared across official channels. It did not name Caitlin Clark. It did not acknowledge the accusations of silencing players. It did not address the specific concerns fans and media had been demanding answers about. Instead, it described the situation as a strategic rotational decision and urged everyone to trust the process. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Fans saw through the language instantly. Reporters called the statement evasive. Players did not even pretend to accept it. The phrasing confirmed exactly what people already suspected.
And it has now reached levels of inconsistency that plague our sport and undermine the integrity.
This was damage control, a calculated attempt to minimize a controversy that had already spiraled beyond anything public relations tactics could contain. The playbook was obvious. Vague terminology, zero accountability, complete avoidance of substance. But this approach might have worked in a previous era. It failed catastrophically in an age when social media preserves everything and forgets nothing. Sophie Cunningham responded to the official statement with a single eye roll emoji on Twitter. No caption, no explanation needed. That one emoji accumulated tens of thousands of likes within minutes. The message was unmistakable. We see exactly what you are doing. Lexi Hull reposted a video clip of the statement being read on air with her own caption attached. So we are pretending this is normal now. The sarcasm cut through corporate deflection like a blade. Fans amplified both responses until they overshadowed the original statement entirely. Even veteran analysts who typically maintain neutral positions began questioning the league publicly. One former WNBA player tweeted that rotational decisions do not erase your MVP candidate without a reason, and something about this situation stinks. The numbers told their own story. Engagement on league content cratered, while engagement on player criticism soared. The WNBA had lost control of its own narrative, and every attempt to regain that control only demonstrated how badly leadership misunderstood what they were facing. The fractures within. While the public battle raged across social media, something equally significant was happening inside locker rooms across the league. Teams were fracturing along lines that had nothing to do with basketball. Veterans who had spent years navigating league politics quietly found themselves opposed by younger players who refused to accept the old rules. Silence versus rebellion. Consider loyalty to institutions versus loyalty to truth. The divide spread through multiple franchises simultaneously.
The unrivaled basketball league, and in a few years, Philly will be getting its very own WNBA team.
According to sources close to several teams, the atmosphere had become radioactive. Players who used to joke together before games were now whispering in corners. Eye contact became loaded with meaning. Trust collapsed as everyone tried to figure out who supported the status quo and who was ready to demand change. The situation stopped being about one controversial benching and became about the entire culture of how the league treated its athletes. Stories began emerging from unexpected places. Former players who had left the league years earlier started sharing their own experiences of being silenced, overlooked, or punished for speaking honestly. Each account added weight to the pattern Sophie and Lexi had exposed. And this was not an isolated incident.
Sophie Cunningham joining us virtually. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us here on Sports Zone.
This was how things operated. The only difference now was that someone finally had the courage to say it publicly. Reports indicated that players from multiple teams were communicating privately about the situation. Discussions happening off the record, away from official channels, under growing pressure to stay quiet. A coalition was forming among athletes who felt the league had failed them, who believed the only path forward required forcing accountability from leadership that had never faced real consequences. The WNBA was no longer dealing with two outspoken players. It was facing the possibility that its entire workforce might stop accepting conditions they had tolerated for years. The final warning. Just when the controversy seemed to be settling into an uncomfortable stalemate, Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull returned with something neither the league nor the public anticipated.
Lexi Hull will pull up and knock it down in transition. What a confident stroke.
A joint interview broadcast live across sports networks where they abandoned every unwritten rule about what athletes are supposed to say. No prepared statements, no diplomatic hedging, no corporate-approved language designed to protect relationships with management. They sat side by side, looked directly into the cameras, and issued a warning that left zero room for misinterpretation. The era of silence was officially over. Sophie spoke first. Her voice carried a calm that somehow made her words land harder. If this is how you treat the player who built your league, no one is safe. The room fell completely silent. Reporters who had been preparing follow-up questions froze with pens suspended above notebooks. The implication was devastating and impossible to dismiss. This was no longer about defending one teammate who had been treated unfairly. This was about exposing an entire system capable of targeting anyone who became inconvenient, anyone who accumulated too much influence, anyone whose voice threatened the control executives believed they deserved to maintain. Sophie was not simply criticizing a decision, she was indicting a culture.
Sophie Cunningham, two of the greatest basketball players to ever play here.
Lexi followed without missing a beat. Her eyes never left the camera. We have been told to stay quiet for too long. Not anymore. That was it. The line in the sand drawn so clearly that no one could pretend to misunderstand. The declaration landed like a punch that echoed through every locker room in the league. Players watching from home understood exactly what they were witnessing. Her two athletes with everything to lose had decided that truth mattered more than safety. That solidarity with their colleague outweighed the career consequences that speaking honestly might bring. That remaining silent while injustice happened in plain sight made them complicit in ways they refused to accept. Clips from the interview traveled faster than anything either woman had said before. Within hours, the footage had been viewed millions of times across every platform. Commentators who typically maintained careful neutrality called it the most honest moment in WNBA history.
Came out firing about the commissioner of the WNBA.
The authenticity was undeniable. These were not performers reading scripts. These were athletes who had reached the limit of what they could tolerate and decided the world needed to see their anger unfiltered. On NBA, players began retweeting the footage with fire emojis and endorsements that amplified the message further. Even rival WNBA stars who had previously stayed silent started liking and reposting the video. Some added subtle captions like "finally" or "say it louder." The support was spreading beyond the original controversy into something that felt like collective awakening. The movement reached an entirely new level in the days following the interview. Fans organized coordinated campaigns urging sponsors to choose sides publicly, back the players demanding accountability, or risk losing the audience those players had built. Independent media outlets began publishing deep investigative pieces examining league politics, quiet punishments, and careers that had been derailed for reasons that never appeared in official records. The spotlight that had initially focused on one suspicious benching now illuminated every executive decision the league had hoped would stay hidden. Everything was being dragged into public view, whether leadership wanted it there or not.
WNBA players already are, so this is really an amplification of their leadership.
Sophie and Lexi had transformed from outspoken teammates into something far more threatening to the established order. They had become symbols of resistance, proof that players could challenge institutional power and survive the backlash. Their willingness to absorb personal risk gave permission to others who had been afraid to speak. The coalition that had been forming quietly in private conversations suddenly had public leaders willing to take the first blow. The WNBA faced a choice it had never anticipated confronting. Acknowledge that the culture Sophie and Lexi described was real and commit to genuine change, or double down on the silence strategy and watch as more players decided they had nothing left to lose by telling their own truths. The warning had been delivered. The players were done asking for permission to be treated fairly.
WNBA players need to supplement their income by playing overseas.
They were done accepting conditions previous generations had tolerated out of fear. They were done pretending that staying quiet protected anything worth protecting. If the league would not defend its athletes, then those athletes would defend each other. And the women leading that defense had just demonstrated they were not afraid of consequences anymore. The league thought silence could bury the truth. They thought disappearing a star would go unnoticed. That control was stronger than outrage. But the voices of Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull have ignited a reckoning that cannot be erased. A spark now spreading through locker rooms, boardrooms, and broadcast studios alike. Fans are watching, sponsors are watching, and the players who built the game are watching too. The question now is not whether change is coming, but whether the league will adapt before it loses the very stars who made it impossible to ignore. How far will this fire burn, and who will be left standing when the smoke clears?